And you know, like in the U.S., when Bush passed that Medicare or Medicaid thing to, you know, kind of increase the amount of drugs that, you know, people on social assistance and the elderly could get, it was actually written into the law that the government could not negotiate on price. So here the government's going to be the biggest buyer of pharmaceuticals, and they can't negotiate a bulk deal. The pharmaceutical company sets the price and you have to pay it. It's written into the law. That can't happen without undue influence, because that's not in the public interest at all. So it's quite interesting. So as far as that goes, you had a question.
Quick question about the standing issue.
Yes.
And when you don't have legal standing, is there any recourse? Like what constitutes standing, and how do you address that in those higher courts?
Basically, my point is you're screwed. Then you don't have rule of law, right? Like, I mean, it's interesting, in the True Hope case, the parties were, you know, True Hope, it's a nonprofit organization that manages this program. So surely to goodness they have an interest. And then David Hardy, who was one of the founders, who 2 of his kids depend on it for serious mental health conditions. And what the court said is well, I'll look at whether your personal charter rights were violated, but I won't look at any other evidence. When the case law is all the opposite. The case law is, well, it doesn't actually matter if your personal charter rights are violated. You have to show me how it affects other people. So, I mean, do I think we got a fair shake in that case? No. No, I don't. It's funny, I should have known several months before the hearing. I got a call from the court registry. And it was an interesting call, because it started off with, I'm not making this call, and if you say we did, I'm denying it. And it was a person who works at the registry who was communicating that the registry was very concerned because the Chief Justice in Ottawa was micromanaging the file, and they'd never seen that ever happen before. So, you know, it's just interesting.
Use the mechanisms for their own...
I'm communicating to you, we're losing the rule of law. Because we're losing it on standing, and then the Department of Justice just fights everything tooth and nail, and they have resources. They exhaust you. I mean, they exhaust you. So, yeah. And you would think, if you're going to have rule of law, you got the government with a whole bunch of resources, and you got the citizen with no resources, really, that if we cared about the rule of law, the government would make it as easy as possible to have a court adjudicate things. Just, you know, okay, we'll concede this is the real issue, how do we get it to the court in a streamlined process? But it's the opposite. And you can talk to other lawyers who fight the Department of Justice in any area, and I mean, they'll privately say, well, I think they have a rule book, you know, where they basically, the strategy is to exhaust your client financially. And most people who take the federal government to court will only do it once. They'll never do it again. Because, I mean, just on the True Hope case, so now the government's applying for costs. They won't tell us how much. We're going to have to argue. They're saying, well, they're like, because usually in a court case, there's like tariffs for costs. And, you know, a court will order, you know, kind of middle of the road usually, and it's only a partial. Like, let's say you spend $1 million and you won, like $1 million in legal fees, you might recover a couple $100,000. But the government's saying, you know, this was such a complicated case, we actually won't be, we want special increased costs. Basically, they want to destroy this company as a means of taking because often the government doesn't ask for costs. But they're telling the court, no, well, not only do we want costs, we want our actual costs. There was a team of lawyers against me. So, yeah, so that company may cease to exist. That's very likely, and that remedy will be taken away, and there will be suicides and people going back to psych wards. So, just saying I'm behind you first, sorry.
So, I mean, I definitely have an understanding of what the legal mafia is doing, and I've experienced it in different ways. So much so that I've decided that you kind of got to go underground. But my question to you is there any way we can exhaust them? Because I know that that's their game plan, right? Because as long as the law is written in their favor, they're for it. And if it's not written in their favor, they're against it. And, you know, to me, it's very, very criminal on many levels, and there's different tiers of it.
I mean, so, you know, you say, is there anything can we exhaust them? Like, what do you mean? By starting lawsuits? And because the sad part is their pockets are our pockets.
Well, that's the thing, right?
So,
They're
I mean, I actually
stealing
think
our
this
money.
is gonna have to be dealt with democratically. I think we need people to wake up, and we need to get a complete reset.
Do we even live in a democracy anymore?
Well, I don't believe we do. But
So I mean,
you
how do
even
we?
asking the question?
Have we ever?
So,
Well, I agree with you, Steve.
right. I'm just wait. She was first, and then I'll come back to you. And okay, so.
What if we redesign our legal system based on the right to live, and we do that by consensus, such that the right to live is me recognizing that you're alive, and you recognizing I'm alive as a species member, right? I'm in this body, and you recognize. You say, "Oh, my name's Jacqueline. There's Jacqueline. She's in a body." I know, because you're like me, you're the same species, that her body has needs. My body has needs that have to be met every day, or I'll die. There's, try not breathing for a few minutes and see what happens. The right to live could be a new platform for our legal system, such that the only function of law is to protect my right to live. Law being defined as force, and you've just given us some magnificent examples of how every law is force. If we redesign our legal system, and it has to happen through an education process, and it can only happen and that's where the education process comes in, is that I know this is my body, and I can prove this is my body. I can prove I'm alive. I can prove that I have the right to live because I am living. The living proof is that here I am. I'm breathing, I'm thinking, I'm feeling in this body. So to restructure our legal system such that the only function of the law is to protect my right to live, then the law doesn't make any decisions for me anymore. The only thing that the law does is to protect me from somebody else infringing on my right to live. And again, you've given a number of examples, through theft, through bodily harm, etc., etc. In a free country, we don't tell each other what to do. Free people are not ordering each other about. You're free to live in any manner you choose, put what you want into your food and drink, etc., etc. Live in a manner you choose, as long as you're not interfering with my right to live. And then as communities throughout the land, we come together and we decide how we want to conduct our trade, because I have needs that must be provided for every day or I'll die. When we recognize that you have needs, I have needs, and our needs are similar but not the same. You have your own preferences and I have mine. So when you and I agree, and as a community we agree, this is how we're going to conduct our trade, whether you're building chairs or cleaning the toilets, or all of the functions that are so necessary for a society. I believe, and under that type of a system, there would be no need for taxation, because the government doesn't provide any directions for our lives. We provide it ourselves. The only time the law would interfere with my life is when I've infringed somehow upon you. And as you said, contract laws.
Let me stop you, because I think you've made your point. And I think that would be wonderful to see that.
I just want to add one other thing when I
So-
say no taxation. If we retained import-export duties alone, that would be more than enough to cover our national defense and our policing. I just wanted to throw that in.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, part of the problem that I have with, our legal system as it is there's just this assumption that the government can take control over our lives, like in every single area. And, we're taught that the government has legitimacy. So it's interesting with First Nations, because the whole premise of our system, if the Queen is, according to our system, owns all our land. So in fact, even the house that you'd buy and stuff like that, the fee simple, legally you don't own the land. You're just you've purchased from the Queen the right to quiet enjoyment without, exclusive quiet enjoyment, but you don't own it. And it's kind of interesting, because we know historically what happened is some of the unwashed from England sailed on a ship, and they had a flag with them, and they planted it on the ground, and now the Queen owns this country. That's the basis of our legal system. And I'm kind of wondering, there's still some countries out there that have monarchs. They haven't clued in. They should send a boat over here and claim this, and take over this country. Like, that's the basis of our legal system.
I understand
And we
that.
inherit, from England. The Queen owns all the land. and Parliament is supreme. They can make decisions that affect the individual. I mean, even the idea they could, pass a law compelling you to go to war and kill people and die. Like, isn't that a fantastic? And did any of us sign on to this? No. We're just born into it and told and taught. Well, the beauty is we're actually taught we're free and this is a great country and it's a super system, and we buy into it until you're kind of on the tail end.
That's good.
So, okay, and then you had a question then, I think.
Oh, sorry, you didn't answer my question.
Well,
My
Can
question
I
is,
have a
what
step?
if we did that?
oh,
Can I have a
well,
step?
I think it would be a step forward. I mean, I hear you talk, and I think that actually would be a
Super
wonderful basis,
Thanks.
right? Like,
Can I have a shot at that?
well, no, but just wait, her first, and then, sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, you were alluding to it, and that's the fact that the Queen is claiming this territory, but underneath that claim is Aboriginal title.
Well, you were here before we came.
And
I mean, I don't, but it's fantastic to me that the government has control of my life because of some queen who, hundreds of years ago somebody planted a flag here. Like, how's that a basis for authority over any of us? Like, it's,
like
when you think about it, it's quite something.
for me, I'm a herbalist and a medicine woman, and any laws like that impact my rights as a medicine woman to go out and collect herbs and use it on my clients. And for a long time, I had to say, I recommend, I'm not prescribing.
Right, you had to be careful.
I had to just be careful about how I dealt with people, right? And that's how I circumvented that law,
Right.
right? But the thing is, I'm concerned about any regulations being made that impact Aboriginal title and jurisdiction
Yeah.
over our people.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like, the federal government, Health Canada would say, we have authority to regulate your traditional medicine, and you need to get a license and pre-approval. I'm just telling you, I know that's what they'll say, and I've seen them intervene on, reserves that were looking into other remedies and other ways of doing things. So, like even, Treaty 6 out west is the only treaty I'm aware of that actually has a medicine chest clause. And, some of the chiefs have been getting together and they're wanting to get more control over their health care. Well, the government's viewing, well, that's fine, but that still only involves things we approve for you. It's just, it's interesting. I don't accept it as valid, but, they tell the people with the guns which way to point them. So we've got a problem. I'm sorry, I'm encroaching. Thank you for your...